Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Looking forward to the conversation today. You'll find out why in a second here when I introduce our guest. But have you ever wondered how entire nations, it seems, can be influenced to do some pretty rotten things? And how does that happen? How is it possible that a few key leaders can control huge numbers of the population? Well, we're going to find out a little bit more about that today. Dr. Robert Malone is joining us today. He, of course, became famous during the COVID pandemic, or infamous, depending on how you view that. He's one of the pioneers in mRNA vaccine research, an immunologist, and author of a new book called PsyWar. Fascinating book. The subtitle, Enforcing the New World Order. And you can get that anywhere good books are sold. His website is rwmalonemd.com. So again, rwmalonemd.com. I encourage you to check out that website. A lot of informative stuff there that will help you along the way here. So good to have you with us, Dr. Malone.
Thanks so much for having me on, and thanks for the opportunity to speak once again to my friends in the Great White North.
Yeah, it's pretty cold here today. It's going to get better, though. Can only get better. Do you want to first of all just maybe give us a brief snapshot of what your book is all about? Because we're used to you talking about, very specifically about the coronavirus and that sort of thing, and some of the answers and solutions to that, and the vaccines. Why aren't they safe? Or are they safe, and so forth. But this has a little more to do with some of the psychology involved in this whole battle.
Yeah, and anybody that follows my Substack, Malone.news, or Who is Robert Malone, which is a shout out to a Canadian humorist that goes by the name of What's Her Face, who posted a video very early on talking about the censorship that I was experiencing and the kind of defamation slander that was going on in rewriting of history on Wikipedia. So I thank her, my Canadian friend that I've never met, for her endorsement and support way back in the day that gave birth to our Substack name. But if you follow the Substack, you know that I write, and my wife writes with me, Dr. Jill Glassbell, who is a co-author of this book. We write about many, many things. We write about marriage. We write about our lives. We write about homesteading because we've homesteaded the home and horse ranch that we currently live on over the last eight or 9 years. And we write about geopolitics. And of course, we write about COVID. And the genesis of this book, like the preceding book, The Lies My Government Told Me and the Better Future Coming, is based on experiences that we've had that we've kind of been chronicling on a daily basis through our Substack essays. So both of these books have been serialized in the greatest traditions using Substack. And then those Substack essays that were related have been bundled together and restructured to give rise to these two books, The Lies My Government Told Me and PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. And as we were experiencing the barrage of censorship and propaganda and defamation, and I could go on and on and on, and also observing this happening to others for instance, writing about what happened with the Canadian truckers movement that I was in close communication with during that whole thing. In fact, I had recorded a piece that was going to be broadcast or presented, viewed by the Canadian truckers as they were leaving town at a farm where they were going to have a pig roast. This had been announced, and the farmer was demonetized, debanked, like happened to so many others under Trudeau and Friedland. In the context of that truckers' action that I think was recognized worldwide as one of the major steps forward towards autonomy and personal freedom in the face of what we were all experiencing. So we had been chronicling all these events and found that about a year and a half, heading on 2 years ago, after we published the Lies book, that we had written so much about psychological warfare and fifth generation warfare and what had gone on with what we now call the censorship industrial complex, that we should take those essays together, restructure them, bundle them, sort them into a table of contents, and publish. And that was the source of this book. So it is very much a reflection of our personal experience and then our attempts to make sense out of what we were seeing around us, starting with the points about what has been the historic role of propaganda. And we kind of start our timeline with the assassination of the US President John F. Kennedy and the manipulation of information that began then, and then extending through the present, gradually building in sophistication to give rise to this new structure that we now live within in the age of the internet and cell phones and social media. And so the book kind of follows that, and it dissects various aspects of this. The purpose of the book really is not to whine and pule about our own experiences. Certainly, what we've been subjected to is nothing like what Donald Trump has experienced. But certainly, we've had a pretty good window into the way that this fifth generation warfare or psychological warfare tech that was developed for offshore combat by our militaries, the NATO militaries in general, and the Five Eyes Alliance, which Canadians are part of,
Mm-hmm.
and then deployed against their own citizens. And this is something that absolutely happened in Canada. There's multiple press reports that I often cite when I lecture on this, when I lecture on fifth generation warfare and PsyWar. There's multiple Canadian publications based on Freedom of Information Act disclosures and other disclosures from your government that document the role of your own military in deploying this technology against your own citizens.
Yeah, that
So,
should, I mean, this is designed, as you say, by our militaries, for, in one sense, good purposes to protect our nations. But when you use it
yes.
against your own citizens, as you write about in your book, that becomes a problem. So again, the book is called PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. So PsyWar, short for psychological warfare, right? And so, I mean, you're suggesting, you're writing here, and I believe you, that in fact our governments, as well as probably non-government organizations, you mentioned the World Economic Forum, are they using PsyWar techniques right now to target various, populist movements, such as anti-vax groups, whatever it is, against yourself? I mean, I know your phone is probably, being listened into.
Yeah, I assume that Pegasus 2 is installed on our phones. We recently switched phones, and strangely, I had some individuals very aggressively reaching out, trying to connect with us and get us to respond to them, which is how Pegasus gets uploaded.
Hmm.
Pegasus is this advanced spyware that was originally developed by the Israelis, is used by the US FBI, many others, was used by uh, Mohammed bin Saud and loaded onto Jeff Bezos's cell phone that resulted in the Saudis acquiring the images of Jeff Bezos that were compromising,
Hmm.
having to do with his then girlfriend, now I believe wife, since he's been divorced. And then they attempted to blackmail him. This all related to the Khashoggi murder of this Washington Post reporter, and of course Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, so it was a leverage attempt, really a blackmail attempt. But there's no way to trace whether Pegasus is on your phone. You can find it, and of course we experience this with both our phones and our computers. They paradoxically turn on in the middle of the night, and you can detect this as they'll be quite warm. because, of course, they're being downloaded. And paradoxically, the batteries will not charge completely, or they will have been discharged. These are all signs that someone has installed something on your phone that's reporting back to whomever. Uh,
Okay.
and we just have to assume that this software is there. And the way to deal with that for someone like myself is you don't do anything nefarious and illegal, unlike the
Yeah,
government.
for sure.
You keep your nose clean and um, behave with integrity and ethically, and then you don't have anything to hide uh,
Hmm.
and nothing to apologize for. Those that engage in nefarious behavior or illicit sexual activity or whatever, well, they put themselves at risk for blackmail and weaponization of the kind of information, such as it appears that Epstein was doing to
Hmm.
control a variety of influential people all across the world. So that's the way I deal with it: is just assume that you're being bugged and
Yeah,
get on with your life. Uh,
probably safe to assume some of these things. Yeah, although again, we don't want to walk around, looking behind every bush for
yeah,
spies.
no,
I can't
what are
live
you going to
life.
do?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't live life that way, right? So
yeah,
your book, mentions, again, global governance. That is the goal of some
yes.
of these groups here. Now, you mentioned World Economic Forum. Of course, the UN seems to be connected to that, to the World Health Organization.
And there
Um,
is a partnership agreement between the WEF and the UN and the WEF and the WHO. So they are functionally partners.
okay.
And they absolutely, it's funny, they're not shy about sharing their intentions.
Yeah, that is to
And
me a little surprising. Yeah, if you do a little bit of basic research, you'll find out what their plans are. They aren't shy about sharing
yeah,
that.
Agenda 2030 is out in the open. Uh, the plans of the pandemic treaty, the international health regulations, these partnership agreements, uh, they're all out there. And of course, the one that I used to think was a conspiracy theory early on in the COVID years, approximately 20 to 22. I had a film crew come on to the farm and shoot some segments with me. I think it was late 2021, and they kept talking about the Great Reset, and I thought they were bonkers. And then I read Klaus Schwab's book called The Great Reset, and I realized this was not a conspiracy theory. This was real, and that explicitly the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and its Young Leader Program, et cetera, which trained both Christopher Friedland and Justin Trudeau to support WEF agendas and logic, and Jacinda Ardern and our Gavin Newsom and so many of the people that served in the prior administration. um, they they explicitly indicated that the COVID crisis would be an opportunity to basically reset global politics and economics to advance a variety of agendas. And these agendas include universal digital ID, central bank digital currency, uh, various financial structures, and it's an undeniable fact that the COVID years were associated with the greatest upward transfer of wealth in modern history.
Yeah,
So
we're
when
talking
people,
people, these people have a lot of money under their control and influence. I mean that's common knowledge. And you refer to this as talking about the pandemic opening up a door of opportunity here to really control people, right? And bring in things like digital ID, digital currency. You can freeze people's bank accounts. I mean, there's some serious stuff with this. You call it psychological bioterrorism. That's really interesting.
yeah, so
You
that's
know,
chapter 4. It's
okay.
very relevant to the current dialogue having to do, and I assert that it's largely propaganda, having to do with bird flu.
Okay. Hmm.
And that chapter is very much influenced by a uh, interview obtained by a New Zealand journal in 2017 of a former Soviet KGB officer that then also worked in Russian intelligence for years and who is a specialist in biowarfare and information based biowarfare. And he resigned from the service and wrote a book. It's one of the great disclosure volumes, kind of whistleblower volumes of how the former Soviet Union and then modern Russia has implemented its intelligence regime, its disinformation campaigns. And he speaks about, his term was information bioterrorism.
Hmm.
And he discusses this in 2017 with a focus on bird flu, because remember, this is like bird flu round four that we're currently experiencing. He spoke specifically about bird flu in 2017, and he spoke about this as standard global spycraft that is known by many and operated by and employed by many intelligence agencies, involving the weaponization of fear of infectious disease, hence why I call it psychological bioterrorism. And he laid out a process of a series of discrete steps that are used in this spycraft and roles and responsibilities. And I got to tell you, when I read this, at the time it was 2023, as I recall, but as the interview happened in 2017, so well before COVID, uh, I was gobsmacked that the steps and actions and nuances of the process that he described perfectly anticipated what I had experienced and observed during the COVID crisis, and
Hmm.
which we also experienced and observed in the monkeypox supposed global health crisis as determined by Mr. Tedros. And we're now seeing play out in the context of bird flu. And in the United States, now we're seeing the beginning of scare around Ebola yet again.
Hmm.
One of the things that this Soviet KGB agent described was that as these things come to maturity and they get resolved, these campaigns, these psychological warfare campaigns, uh, that it's useful to keep the issue alive or warm. He uses warmth and heat as one of his core metaphors. Like, for instance, the bird flu press right now is being heated, would be his language, to amplify and snowball. I guess this is life in the Soviet Union and in Canada. The metaphors around heat and cold
Yeah.
are important. But he said that it's important when these campaigns are complete that you want to keep the issue alive because you have basically trained a population to respond to those triggers. And, and you want to be able to reuse them at some point in the future, which, of course, is what's happened with bird flu. So that's the short thumbnail of chapter 4 on psychological bioterrorism. And I argue at the closure in that chapter, this is fundamentally unethical. My fear,
I,
and that people who employ this kind of strategy, I don't want to say should be censored because I'm a little sensitive to censorship these days for some reason, but I do think they should be shunned. I think that they should not really be allowed to have a major role in public discourse. My fear is that the biopharmaceutical industrial complex has learned these techniques from the spy masters and is now using it as part of their marketing strategy.
hmm.
And that may underpin at least part of what we're seeing. And remember that in the United States, we don't really have a clear division between the pharmaceutical uh, industry and government and academia. They've all kind of merged together with the very large established medical and veterinary medical associations that are typically capitalized by pharma, and much of what we call corporate media, say CNN, for example, receives a lot of its capital, its funding from pharma. So it's really all one big happy family. And as Brett Weinstein noted early on when we did this Dark Horse podcast that was so seminal up until the Rogan podcast that kind of blew the doors off the COVID crisis, Brett observed that these aren't really separate entities, particularly the corporations such as Reuters and Pfizer. They all have shared common ownership through these very, very large global transnational funds, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Bank of America, et cetera, that all inter-own each other. They all cross-own each other's stocks. So they're really at the top one big syncytia of finance. And then all these corporations functionally are like divisions with underneath one larger, massive transnational corporation that is no longer, these big funds no longer have any sense of nationality, of belonging to a nation state or arising from a nation state. I like to observe that they extract wealth from nation states, but they are transnational. And so that wealth that they extract from our pensions and other sources and then manage for us
Yeah.
ostensibly is set free to wander the globe looking for return on investment. And often that return on investment can be optimized in, say, the People's Republic of China under the Central Communist Party, which is why the World Economic Forum, which is basically the trade union for these 1,000 large companies, um, holds. We all think of Davos, and we all laugh about the Davos prostitute market, et cetera, as a leading indicator of how things are going for the WEF in any one year. But the WEF also holds its annual meeting in the summertime in China, and it rotates between, I think, 2 or 3 different cities in China. So this idea that these funds are benign and they're serving our interest is absurd. And it's no wonder that these very large capital organizations and their trade union, the World Economic Forum, live in a world where they believe that a single world government would be more efficient because it would reduce friction. They wouldn't have to deal with all of these small little governments with their own unique cultures and requirements and import-export issues and governance and regulations. We can just have one big super government. By the way, the United Nations buys into this, and UN and WEF basically speak as if they will be this new
Yeah.
world government.
So,
And
so
that
that's the temptation, right? And it sounds good, I think, to a lot of people who want, Big Daddy to take care of us and so forth. No worries, world peace. We all get along. Everybody's, equal. We'll all have enough to eat. Might
equality of
be
outcome.
bugs, might be fried bugs, but you'll be happy. You won't own anything, but you'll be happy. And that's coming, directly from, the WEF, right? So, I mean, you actually write a chapter on evidence-based medicine is a mirage. And just as you talked about here, it's all interconnected here, right? Who is doing the research? Who's funding it? Is it unbiased? Not so much. Is it free from profit motives? Not so much. So, where's the accountability? And there doesn't seem to be any. And then we wonder why, we have this, that's misinformation coming from, Dr. Malone, he's just a kook, right? Well, hardly. You've got all the credentials in the world. And so somehow, and And I'm sorry I'm running out of time here, but I know you write about, we need to enable a decentralized world to
Thank you.
combat some of these things. That's
Thank you.
so key. Free
Yep.
speech is so key.
Principle of subsidiarity, that decisions should be made at the most local competent level.
Yes.
Uh, this is what's also, frankly, I hear rumors that the European Union is about to tear itself apart. The EU has gone all in on Eurosocialism and on this logic of socialist corporate government uh, cooperation, which I argue meets the criteria that Benito Mussolini applied for the definition of fascism. Um,
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure we want to be going there, right? But yeah, fascism, communism, they're kind of related, Again, you talk about training up our kids, the next generation, to think for themselves, how to think, to ask questions. You talk about citizen journalism, which is absolutely key to combat this mass, mainstream media, legacy media that is twisting things this way and that way. Very briefly, like about 15 seconds, where do you see this going over the next 10 years?
well, as I say in the chapter at the end, which is based on a speech that I gave in Geneva at the time when we were protesting the World Health Organization international health regulations that were being jammed down our throats. We are in a war. That's not just a metaphor and it's not hyperbole. There is a war. It's a subtle war. It's an information war. It's a war of ideas,
And I got to
thought.
jump in there. So I'm sorry because of the clock, but yeah, you talk about this is an ongoing thing, and we need to get involved. I want to steer people to your website. So rwmalonemd.com, PsyWar Enforcing the New World Order. Tell your friends about that. Thanks for watching WizeUp.ca.